This is the second in a series of 6 lectures for the International Catholic University being presented from St. John's Seminary in Brighton, Massachusetts. My name is Father Romanus Cessario, and I teach Moral Theology here. Thanks to the good services of our film crew, you will see images from the newly restored chapel of St. John's Seminary that was decorated at the end of the 19th century by an Italian artist working in Boston during that period. There is in the apse of the Romanesque chapel a representation of Pentecost, and there we see the Blessed Virgin Mary surrounded by the 12 apostles, each illumined by the parted tongues of fire that represent the gift of the Holy Spirit that comes into the world after Christ has returned to the Father in the mystery of the Ascension, and which establishes now for all time an instrument of divine communication which we call the communion of the Church. I refer to that image at the beginning of this second lecture in order to remind the students that the instruction that is being given in these lectures is one that derives its authority and indeed receives its specific theological shape from the truths taught by Christ, communicated to the apostles, and through the power and efficacy of the Holy Spirit are maintained in the world and will be for all time through the instrumentality of the teaching Church. Perhaps there is no better example of how it is that the teaching Church helps us to understand what is specific about the human reality than when we seek to answer the fundamental question that philosophers want to pose for themselves and to answer, namely, what is man? In this lecture, then, we will consider what might be called pre-ethical considerations for moral theology, and specifically anthropological considerations. For many philosophers and others who ask themselves the question, what is man? The task that such a question imposes is one that is daunting and at times surrenders only partial responses or answers. On the other hand, the Church, as the Catechism of the Catholic Church recently put it, presents herself as a master of humanity. The Church is a master of what it means to be human. This is a tremendous claim, one no philosopher should make, and hardly any right-thinking person would dare to make. Why is it that the Church can say to the world that she is a master of humanity? It is, of course, because she recognizes herself as a deposit, or possessing a deposit of faith. She recognizes and knows herself to be an instrument of divine revelation for the world, and that divine revelation includes instruction, includes a teaching about the human person in what is most specifically human, that is to say, the person's knowing and loving. The Church is a master of humanity because she knows how the human person achieves perfection as a human being, as a knower and a lover. It goes without saying that the Church makes no claim to be a master of human biology. That's a science that belongs to the doctor. That's a science that belongs to the biologist. That's a useful and indispensable science for our human well-being. But she does make the claim to be the master of humanity, because it is not the case that the human person can be treated exhaustively by the biologist, or, for that matter, by any physical scientist, or scientist who limits him or herself to the data that matter surrenders. And the reason for that is that the Church knows that what makes the human person specific, different, and of surpassing value is that God has shared something of His very own life with man, and that sharing or participation is the human soul. We know that the Church always refers to human conception and to the coital act which brings it about as the procreative act. Secular theorists are wont to speak about human reproduction with the harsh and mechanist overtones that the word reproducing possesses. But the Church knows that in the mystery of the conception and birth of a new human being, there is something that's far greater and more mysterious and more wonderful that goes on, and it has nothing to do with reproducing. Rather, the husband and wife, man and woman, come together in a union that allows them to participate in an extraordinary and marvelous way in what only God can do, create new life. Their action then is procreative, because in supplying the matter necessary to bring about the human body, husband and wife, at the moment of the union of sperm and egg, as it were, beg God, who it is judged by the Church at that moment, infuses a human soul created for that body, which soul is the ground and root of human dignity. It is what gives to the parents, husband and wife I should say, to the spouses, their vocation as parents. From that moment on, the moment of conception, they are not reproducers or procreators even. At that moment they are parents.